let's talk about story walks. I'm just calling this Google document our WVLS StoryWalk Library. And this is where I'm going to keep everything about story walks in general, what they are, what we need to do. And then also Steph Cherrywell from Anne started up a StoryWalk exchange sheet for libraries who already have story walks made who might want to share them, which is awesome. And I am shouting out Steph Cherrywell because that is awesome initiative. So thanks, Steph.
Let's see,
and then I also collected experience stories from libraries in WVLS who are doing story walks. And then if I remembered somewhere in the back of my mind, I added other libraries to the list. And these are hyperlinked to the information that libraries shared about their story walks below. So we have some experienced visitors with us today. Steph is here, Krista's here, Denise is here, Annette's here, Carla's here, Taylor is not, but we have lots of MCPL people here. Not from the main branch, but we have MCPL in here. And Andrea's here from Merrill, and Erica Berg could not join us from Minocqua, but she's on here yet. The first thing that I want to mention is we as librarians are always concerned with copyright and giving credit where credit's due. And I had a lot of questions last week and over the fall here about the legalities of having a story walk. And so I do have some information on the sheet of what we need to do. You are more than welcome to call your program a story walk. You just need to give credit to the creators, maybe on the bottom of your flyer or somewhere within your Facebook page. It was created by Anne Ferguson in Vermont and her friend Rachel Senechal from the Kellogg-Hubbard Library. And so all you need to do is put that little snippet on your flyer or on your Facebook event page that's promoting your story walk, and you're good to go. So that's one piece. And then the second piece was, okay, so I want to do a story walk and I have to take apart a book. Can I do that? And what I have found across the internet and in other state libraries is that once you purchase a book, you can do whatever you like to it to a point. So most libraries that I've seen describe their process, they buy 2 copies of the book because you have front and back sides of it. So they take it apart, they put it in order, and they laminate it or they put it onto something. But one big piece is that you cannot alter any of the images. So what some libraries are doing is they are putting the page onto a big piece of cardboard or something and adding information around it. You know, in the descriptions here, most of the libraries that are doing story walks include a number sequence so that people who are participating know what page they're on, and maybe they skipped one on their walk. The other things that you could put around your images or your pages could be your library website where they can find more information about the story walk, maybe the dates that it will be up. That's, some other ideas that we can talk about in a little bit here. But I just wanted to mention again that I hyperlinked this area so you can hop down to the different experiences and take a look in there.
And can I just add something real fast?
Yeah.
We probably do ours completely different than anybody else, but
hang on, this is Denise from Rhinelander.
Yes. We don't take apart a book. We get publisher permission to copy the pages, and then I put them into Canva and arrange them, and then we have them printed off that way. This has worked out really, really well for us. Number one, it saves money because we're not having to buy 2 books. And number 2, the other thing I've done is kept in touch with the authors and publishers, and I send them pictures. And they really, really like that. So just another option if somebody's looking for a different way to do it.
I love that, communicating directly with the author. And I'm going to call on Krista next. But I also want to add that Lots of publishers, just like earlier this year where there was all that communication about using authors' books for virtual story times, a lot of that information applies to StoryWalks too. So like Denise said, reaching out to a publisher is always the best way to go because then you have direct permission. And then other experiences later down in the document talk about how a lot of people put information about how to buy the book that was used because a lot of families are interested in buying the book after that. So I think that's a positive thing that can come out of this too. Krista, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask Denise if she has had anybody say no, that they couldn't, or if you have to pay the publisher to be able to do it that way. That is a nice idea. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't had any negative experience that way. They've all been really nice about it. There was one publisher who made us sign a contract for the amount of time that we were going to have it up. But everybody else has been really informal. They're like, oh, great, yeah. And I would reply to them and say, well, we'll send you pictures. Oh, thank you so much. So it's been real positive.
So do you make copies of it on your photocopier?
Yep, I scan them in, and then I put them into Canva. And I work up an 11 by 17 spread and send it to the printer. And they work with us. They give us a good deal. We bought some paper that's weatherproof, and then it goes in the downtown business windows. So
can you share a link to that weatherproof paper?
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. I'm writing a note to grab that from you too. Yeah, you can pop it into the chat or I can grab it from you later. Weatherproof paper. That's cool. Okay. And Carla from Stetsonville is asking, what publishers has everyone worked with? Denise, do you want to kick us off with that?
I'm trying to think now. I think HarperCollins was one for sure. And Little Brown and Company were the two that come to mind right off the top of my head.
Cool. Annette, how about you with publisher stuff, or have you done local things?
Oh, well, when I did mine several years ago, I think I wrote that I did an indoor one for a Halloween gathering. We did Room on the Broom. And I just made sure that at the very beginning, I posted the part about Anne Ferguson and Montpelier and all that you're required to do. But at that time, I just did some looking, and it just said as long as you purchased the book, and you didn't add anything to it. So we just purchased 2 copies of Room on a Broom, and it was paperback, so they weren't like it wasn't a huge investment. 2 paperback picture books, and then we just carefully took them apart and posted them on boards all along the stacks in our children's end. And so I did, other than just making sure, 1, to credit, the founder of StoryWalks, and then 2, just to be sure if we owned the books, we could do with them what we wanted to, as long as we didn't change the story or change the images like you mentioned. And then I don't know if my little blurb you included talked about how I put the dragons outside. I don't know if you talked about that at all. But
I didn't, but that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
But for that, I think I did put it in the Youth Services Information Exchange, how I follow the Ringtown Library. And when I saw her idea and I wanted to do it with Dragon Was Terrible, my first thought wasn't to contact the publisher. My first thought was to contact the author. So I just contacted the author, and she was like, wow, that's awesome. And she's like, wait a minute, I wrote the story, but I didn't draw the dragon. Maybe we should ask, the illustrator. And so then she gave me his email, and he's like, that's cool. Here, I'll send you your own copy of Dragon that you can reproduce to put around town. I'm like, great. And then they're both like, we'll check with the publisher just to make sure. And so he's like, yeah, they're fine. So that's kind of how that one, came about. So, but it was really, really wonderful. I think Denise made a good point. It was really wonderful because you're like, we can just email an author? Okay. And yeah, and they write you back, and they're so thrilled and so kind. And so, yeah, that was a great experience. I haven't done an outdoor story walk. I've been talking about it for many, 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 many years, but sadly, in the back of my mind, I know that many things that are done outside in our area here are vandalized, I'm sad to say. And so it has really made me leery, although now that I'm seeing people who kind of like put one out for the day, just like stick them in the ground and have them out while you're open, like for a day in the summer, and bring them back in at 5 and then put them back out again, you know, the next day. That might be a thought for the future, because I really think it's, especially now, such a valuable thing for us to be able to do for people. And just putting the dragons, or I did pumpkins in the fall too, outside, everyone was so thrilled just because it was something, you know, to do, and something that connected the library with the community, which was really super cool. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Are we feeling comfortable about the how to ask permission aspect? I think that you guys have shown that everybody is really awesome at communicating, and it's, you know, they're wanting their materials to be used. I love that. Anne asked in the chat, what makes a good choice of a book for a story walk? You know, are we considering vocabulary, words per page, verbosity, reading level? How did you pick your books, everybody?
Is there like a way to virtually raise hands, or do we just talk, or how does this work?
I think you just raised your hand, Steph. Go for it.
Well, I picked mine. My book was Bear Came Along, the first one I picked. And that was mostly to do with where it was located, because our story walk is on a local trail that is right next to the lake, and kind of going up. We have like a long lake that kind of, there's a river that, it's one of those things where the river just kind of widens out into a lake for a little while. And the story is about a bunch of animals traveling down a river. So I thought, oh, here's a really good, here's a story that really fits the setting. So you can go and you can walk down the river yourself and see this story that about animals traveling. And then after the story walk, it actually goes right into like this sort of wetlands boardwalk area. So it's like, hey, maybe you'll see some animals that are in the story. Maybe not the bear, but probably, but some of the others that show up.
That's awesome. And you said Bear Came Along, and that's by Karma Wilson? Karma...
No, I think that's a different bear. That's a different bear who just happens to share the same name.
Okay.
Bear is a common name for bears. I think it's Richard Morris. Let me just double check.
Richard Morris. Something. So while Steph is looking that up, so Bear Snores On.
Illustrated by Luyan, I think is the pronunciation, Pham. And it's, yeah, that's who it is. It's not one of the Carmen Wilson bear books. It's very distinctive looking.
It's pretty new, isn't it, Steph?
Yeah, last year it came out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then recently we switched it out. We switched it to the Mitten, which is the one with the Jim Aylesworth, I think, version. I think there's a couple different versions of it. But it's the classic one where a bunch of animals climb into a mitten and it just gets bigger and bigger and blows up. And it's just a really fun story. And it's a good winter story for anyone who's walking along there in the winter.
Yeah.
But that one is a little older, and actually using an older one was good because I could just buy used ones, and it was a lot cheaper.
Buying used.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea too.
That might only be cheaper if you're getting one that's a little older though. So it depends on which how old the book you're getting and whether you want to get. And for us, I mean, the biggest part of the price was not at all the books. It was the mountings that the books went on, and the placards they go in.
Steph, I can't remember. Did you send a picture of what your stands look like?
I think I remember there was a photo of it at some point. It might have been on Facebook, and I don't know where it is now.
I have your faces up on camera here, so I didn't want to click away. But yeah,
there was. Yeah, no, I remember. Let's see if I can find it. But just go on and continue while I'm doing it, because I don't know how long it's going to take or if I'll be able to.
Okay. Denise, I can't click on your file, your PDF there. Just Krista, you raised your hand.
I just don't want to interrupt, that's all. In choosing a book, there was two different things that I came up with. Some of the page where I learned about StoryWalk from the lady who created the idea, they had some suggestions, which is what we had up this fall, that I just had to take down because of the snow removal system, was afraid of damaging it. So I'm trying to find another way I can put that story up again for the winter. But the first one I chose was based on, I wanted a bilingual book or something that had Spanish. And so I just was looking for like what was very colorful and didn't have a lot of words per page. So I got one called Gazpacho for Nacho, and I loved the colors and not a lot of words per page and just very interactive. And this book ended up having also a recipe for gazpacho in it and a whole vocabulary page for the Spanish words. I got tons of really good responses from it. So that was one way. And then, like I said, the other way was a suggestion. It's called The Animal's Winter Sleep. And that was a suggestion, I think, on the page. Ferguson, is that her name? Yeah, on that page that had that particular book. It's actually almost like out of print. I found a couple of well-used, like lightly used copies that I was able to get. That wasn't very much, but they were used books. And then while I'm sharing, I wanted to show, so we purchased real estate signs that have a rider. So we have one piece like this that goes in the bottom, and that's got our number on it. And then we've got the upper piece, which goes like on a board, and it slides in and out. So I laminate the pages and then slide them into there. It's made out of like iron, and I think that's what the snow removal guys were like afraid that would damage their machine, or they would damage it.
That's a really nifty idea. I didn't even think.
Well, we wanted to, because we were just trying it out, something that we could actually take in and out of the ground instead of a permanent system, but it's nice and sturdy. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a midpoint. And Annette, I was really afraid of people taking them out or damaging the pages. I have not had any of that happen, and I was really surprised. I thought we would lose pages.
Do you have vandalism in your community?
Yeah, we actually.
But I hate to ask that, but it's a thing.
Yeah, we actually do. In fact, I had several people say, we've got a lot of vandals around here. Are you sure that's a good idea? And I thought, well, I had an extra book in hand in case I had to replace a page, and we didn't have any of that.
Hey, Krista, how were those to get into the ground? Just curious.
A little, you need like a mallet. You need a little bit of physical strength. My husband helped me get them in.
Okay.
And they didn't ask me to take them out until recently, and the ground was frozen. So I actually told the village guys, I'm sorry, I can't get them out. You're going to have to take them out. And they did. Okay. So they did the work for me on that one.
And is it generally about, like the same number? You know what I'm saying?
The first book I had like 17 or 18 spreads, and the second book only had 13 spreads. So I used some of the extra pages because I thought I was going to keep it up through the winter. And so I used some of the extra pages to like put some of our a sheet about our programs in it, and an outdoor scavenger hunt idea, and just kind of filled them up that way.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah, and there are some pictures in that document of the MCPL WASA mount things. the tools that they use to mount that. Let me see in the document if I have the one from Anna go in there. Because generally I kept pictures with the email. So here's the MCPL one with the trail tails. So it's next to the ski trails.
Oh, awesome.
On. Then Mr. Tiger Goes Wild. And remember, the link to this document is in the chat up at the top. And, yep, so here's their mounts here, held down by sandbags in the park. This one is with the Parks Department. Yeah, so I'll keep collecting images and putting it in here and having a section specifically on creation of mounts and maintenance. And Krista, if you send a picture of your real estate tool, that would be awesome. But you don't have to send a picture of your mallet.
Do you mean the signpost holder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also thought I was just writing down some keywords for us that kept popping into my mind. So upkeep, we've talked about the vandalism. We've talked about the different kind of mounts. You know, the MCPO ones are wood and Krista's are iron. Some people talked about printing them on yard signs, so that was Rhinelander. So there will be some upkeep. Should we talk about how you're publicizing it? I know that, you know, Rhinelander and Minocqua, the ones where they have to walk to businesses, that's word of mouth publicizing right there. But do you want to talk about marketing or publicizing or assessment? How you assess how your story walk is going? Any questions?
We made a QR code to stick on the end, which I thought was a great idea, but we actually haven't gotten anybody to scan it. It would open up an email, and then they could send, you know, how many people joined you today? What did you think? Any questions? Or it was just a couple. It wasn't like a big long thing. But nobody's done it yet. So I was hopeful us gather info on who was using it, but I've heard more word of mouth than the scan has gotten used.
You know, when I first talked about this with Sue Abrahamson in Wapaka like 100 years ago, that was when they had their first one in Wapaka, and I think they have like 4 now. But anyway, at that time, at the very end of the story walk, she had like a journal, like someplace for people to sign, like who was here kind of a thing. But it was kept in I think it was another kind of a real estate box or something, plastic.
Like a flyer thing?
Right. And then people could take it out and say, you know, Anne Hamlin and my 3 children were here, and then, or whatever. And then they kind of had a way to keep the statistics, you know what I'm saying? So, but I just, you know, I don't know if they still do it that way, or if someone has come up with another way. I thought that was a good idea with the QR code, but I don't know if a lot of people, especially around here, I don't know if a lot of people really like use that kind of technology here. So,
well, and I can tell you too, we did something similar, but not the QR code. We just did the last page of our story stroll says, thank you for taking the story stroll. Take your picture here and tag library, district library in it. Nobody has done it.
I got the same problem. The first one I did over the summer, the trail I used is called Jeannie's Way, and Jeannie Hummel, she loved dragonflies, so I chose the book Soar High Dragonfly, which had lovely pictures in it, and a nice an educational, informational story to it. And I started out with, and Stetsonville is so small that everybody knew Mrs. Hummel. So I'm like, sign here, you know, put your names down, who in your family came, and I'm going to have a drawing at the, you know, in 2 weeks, and whoever's name I draw will, you know, win a copy of the book. Somebody stole the sign-up sheet. The picture for the story was fine, but somebody decided to take home folder I had with the names and everything in it. So I have not figured out a way of how to track who sees this, how to keep any kind of statistics on it, which is unfortunate because it's kind of the only real programming we have. So if any good ideas, I'm willing to take hold of.
We got a couple of very good, I'd call like qualitative data in terms of people wrote us. We got a couple letters from people who really enjoyed it and said, oh, this story walk is so lovely. So that was nice to get. But I haven't figured any way to track it quantitatively in terms of like how many people are actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I always, whenever we post something on Facebook, I do pictures of our fin, and I do stories, and I like it and share it and give us a comment or something. Nobody does anything. So I cannot get people to share any of
I think that's not uncommon.
what I'm doing. So I feel like when annual report time comes along, it's going to be impossible to express what we've tried to do and how many people we've reached. I have no idea.
Hey, you're not alone, it sounds like.
But people do like it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they say they like it when they see me.
Well, and here's my suggestion. Just like
nobody ever does something where I can actually quantitatively count.
Well, here's what I would say is just like Steph has letters occasionally floating in, write down what people are telling you. Write that down and write their name. And if you don't want to share their name, don't share it. But then you at least have that memory of talking to that person and this is what they said. So you can share that user experience. This year more than ever, you just mentioned the annual reports and how tough it's going to be. But in sending out more information to your community of what you've been doing this year, those little stories from your people's mouths is way more important than the statistics that nobody can provide this year. So keep writing those little notes to yourself on a Post-it and sticking it on your computer. Because remember, I do annual report help, and I create little visuals for everybody, whether that's for print or digital use or for your website. So don't lose hope. Just don't lose hope and keep on going. Mary Hebda from Ogama says that she places story walks using zip ties and page protectors along a schoolyard fence. She's talked to them to get permission about that. She doesn't have a laminator, but the page protectors work for mostly like a month, she says, unless it's raining or fading from the sun. So you guys are all finding ways to do it. It's great.
Yeah, I'm interested in how people's, like, how are you orienting them? Because I noticed some of them, they were kind of tilted up. We have ours vertically so that, and they're kind of printed like put at a height where like a kid walking by would be the most. And then I hear like a fence, that's definitely going to be vertical. We didn't really have much. I mean, I looked at it. I guess I could compare it to a fresh copy of the book, but I don't think we had really any fading at all. So I'm just curious if there's any difference in terms of what's keeping them from fading or not. We do have glass over them. I wonder if that affects it.
In response to that, Steph, mine are vertical like you're mentioning.
Uh-huh.
I use a 5 mil heat lamination over it, and it does not get wet at all, and it hasn't had much fading either, and I don't have glass.
Yeah, ours are laminated, and then they're underneath like it's either glass or plastic. I'm actually not sure. Probably plastic because I would have, if it was glass, I would have been a lot more careful about not dropping it. So I assume.
Yeah, I put mine are cold laminated, and they fade from the sun. They're hanging vertically. It's basically what I got is I pulled fence posts out of my garage and I put holes, just punched small holes in the top and bottom, zip tied them to the posts. And even with those tiny little holes that the zip ties went through, if it rained, water got down in there and they faded from the sun. So they were definitely thrown away when they were done because there was not a second use to get out of them.
It's interesting that some of them are fading and some aren't, and I'm not sure if I can, if we've identified what's affecting it. I guess maybe just mine were not getting as much direct sun or something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, they were facing south, so you'd think they'd be getting sun. There's some, I wonder if the trees were blocking most of it or something.
Mine are facing west, so that mine might not be getting as much sun.
I want to go back to your question, Steph, about how you're posting them, you know, and I'm thinking about accessibility here. Yes, most times when we put out a product, we have a target audience in mind, but have you guys mounted yours in ways that would work for someone who's tall, someone who's a kiddo, shorty, eyesight issues? Have you thought about that?
Ours are like kid height.
Kid height?
Yeah, that's how ours are too. I didn't have any problem reading them as I walked by, so they should work for an adult as long as it's not an adult with, with someone with vision issues might have trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the situation we have. I'm not sure we can make them work for everybody just because they can't be moved really. So it's we just kind of have to decide what we want and what's gonna be the optimal and go with it.
Can I ask those of you who, like, if they're not in a business window, how did you decide how many feet apart between each station, I guess I would call it, between each page, something like that, yeah.
We have light posts along our walkway, and so I put one by each light post so that if anybody was walking at night, they might still be able to read it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how ours are too. They're on posts, so the spacing was by attaching them to things that were already there.
Oh, okay.
Mine was just guess. I did single pages instead of double spreads, just because the way I was doing it, the double spreads were blowing too much. And so I had this many pages, and I took a look around the trail that I was putting them on, and I spaced them out, and then I moved them around, and then I moved them a little bit more, and then I put them. So it was a long process, but I just kind of judged it's kind of in a rectangular shape, so how many would fit on each side so that I could have the story ending at the end of the trail. So it was just a guessing game, but it was a nice day, so I had some fun with it.
So I went to the library that was mentioned in the accreditation in the credit statement, and it says they actually have a frequently asked question document that I threw into the chat that talks about how they chose how far apart to put their pages, and they said they have about 40 paces. So it seems like a good distance. And it says that they find that a half mile works well for small children. I don't know about a half mile. And they use a guest comment book at the end in a weatherproof box with pencils because pens freeze and they won't write on damp pages. So this question, this document is pretty great because it has answered a few of our questions that we've had today about preparing the books, what are the costs, how do I get started, that kind of thing. That's pretty cool.
Good old pencil and paper, right?
That's right. Jenny Jacobson wrote in the chat, what's the time requirement, do you think, that it takes to put together one of these events? The product. Excuse me.
I did mine probably in about a month, but I had to go to a board meeting and ask if I could put them up and then wait for the signs to come that I wanted to put them on. But we had ours up in about a month last summer.
What about now if you wanted to do a new one now? Like getting
nothing.
Getting a book and laminating the pages and how like the processing.
That probably, I just did it and it probably took me a a couple of hours. I mean, getting the book, I guess, so then, you know, how long it took the book to come from Amazon. And I had it up within a week.
Ooh. Nice. So laminating time and then walking it out to your already established posts.
Yeah.
What about you, Steph?
The actual work, some of the stuff here was done by the city. So like actually creating the placards and mounting them, that was all the city. In terms of the actual work, it took me to get a book ready to be a story walk. It doesn't take very long to actually do the laminating the pages. I mean, it was just kind of going through, making sure they were all in sets of 2. The second time, though, when I switched it out, I actually had to go and switch out all the pages from the already installed one, and that one did take quite a while. It was, I think, several hours. So I'm glad I got it done now, because now I don't want to be out there for hours every day. So I'm glad that was finished before it got really cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, that took I think like basically half a day. I think of devoted just to that. Now it's I got faster as I went, so I think if I did it again, it wouldn't take me that long. But there was definitely kind of a learning curve of. Also, I had to. I was like, what kind of screws does it use? And it's like, oh, it uses Phillips head screws. And so I went out and then I discovered it was the other kind of, not screws, screws? Well, whatever, the twisty things. It used the other kind, and I had to go back, and then I came back, and then I looked on the back, and I said, oh, there's also like a little bolt that needs a wrench. And so I had to go back and get that too. So there was a lot of business that wasn't directly related to the actual time that like a competent person would have taken.
Bring the whole toolbox. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if I was doing it again, I could maybe cut that into down at least 2/3 of the time.
Yeah. Okay, so it's about 1:55. We have about 5 minutes left. We have to do a hard stop today. I interrupted someone just now. Who was that? Maybe not.
I was just going to say really, really fast that if you're doing a downtown one, it takes me just a couple of days to throw it into Canva, get it printed, and then it's about 5 minutes per business now that we've had it up. So it's a really easy process, and some of the businesses are even just saying, here, just hand it to us so you don't have to come in if you don't feel comfortable, and we'll throw it up for you. So.
Cool.
What I was struggling for was bolts. Bolts is what they were. Bolts are like the screws that aren't pointy at the end.
Yes.
You can tell I'm really good at carpentry or whatever uses those.
What'd you guys think? Was today a good discussion? I think we got through tons of tips for story walks today.
Interesting to hear about the different ways different people have set them up.
Totally. Well, I'm going to compile our notes and keep that document updated, and I'm going to share it out in 800 different places so you won't miss it. And then, do you guys want to do another discussion in January? Do you guys want to, what's on your minds? I have another spot where I was parking ideas for discussion. Does anybody have any burning question that you want to talk about in January?
Well, I don't foresee our ability to have people in the library changing a great deal very soon. And I mean, we're just doing the best we can with the website and with Facebook, but I'm getting kind of tired of, I read thin favorites, which I pick out a picture book, then I make my dog sit with me and we read a picture book together. And I just kind of burning out on just reading aloud to the kids. And so any kind of, luckily my assistant Mason is very creative, and so he did a pumpkin carving video, and we're going to do the gingerbread houses, but just some different ideas that are short, but more than just sitting there and reading too well.
I've been doing a take-home cooking or recipe following activity for the virtual story time. So they come and they pick it up. It kind of tells me who might show up at the virtual. But some families are just doing it on their own, and some families show up at the virtual Blue Jeans story time that I do. But people really like being able to do that. I've had good response, and it's something that's not reading but still following a recipe. I mean, still relating.
And I haven't been doing any live things. I just record and put it up. So I'm sure there are things that.
Yeah, you could just record yourself. You could just record yourself doing the cooking activity, and then they could access it whenever.
Okay. Because I think I'm just getting a couple new kids books and.
So do you guys want to talk about winter websites and we're tired of reading aloud discussion in January?
If I was
just
recording myself, it would be like, I would be tired of it. But when I'm live, I mean, and I am not a comfortable person in front of the camera, but I still think when I do it live, it's just cool, because then you see like something will pop up in the comments and you're like, oh, there's Cullen, he's here. And it's just, there's that connection that we all crave, that we're all missing right now. And the same thing for when you're going into a classroom live. I think if I was just recording myself, I would be burned out on that. But the live aspect is really, it's not the same, but I'm grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. And sometimes there's only 2 people out there watching, but that's okay.
Hey, the people watch it later. And you guys better believe that I snoop on every one of you. So, just saying.